Good morning, everyone, and welcome to today's session with UCAS. I'll just give everyone else a few more moments as we have several people registered for today's session. So I'll give them a few more moments to get logged in, and then we'll get the session underway. Welcome, everyone, and thank you for joining us today for what promises to be another informative session from UCAS. We have over 100 people registered for today's event from across the industry, including universities, independent training providers, and colleges. This is a real reflection of how the work UCAS is doing is relevant for all types of apprenticeship providers. We are also pleased to have employers joining us today who will benefit from the insights and practical tips shared during today's session. My name is James Templeman. I'm part of the marketing team here at Aptem, and I'm delighted to be supporting today's session with Pete Milsom, Partnerships Manager at UCAS, and Joe Richards, UCAS Senior Insights Lead. I'll ask Pete and Joe to introduce themselves in a moment, but if we could move on to the next slide, please, I will draw your attention to a few housekeeping items. So first of all, we will be recording this session, and everyone who is registered will receive a copy by email. Please do feel free to share this with your colleagues and others in your network. You are muted throughout the webinar, so if you need assistance, please use the questions function in the right-hand panel. And if you have any questions regarding the content of this session, please use the questions function and we will go through these towards the end of the webinar. We'll go to the next slide, please, Pete. So today's speakers are Pete Milsom, UCAS Partnerships Manager, and Joe Richards, UCAS Senior Insights Lead. In this session, Pete and Joe will examine how young people make decisions about their futures, especially when considering university or apprenticeship pathways. They will discuss the findings of UCAS's Project Next Generation research, which revealed the key themes that underpin young people's decision-making, and it will offer practical insights to help employers improve their apprenticeship offering and build a successful early talent pipeline. At the end of the presentation, we will open the floor to attendee questions. So without further ado, I'd like to hand over to Pete and Joe to introduce themselves and get started on the presentation.
Yep, thank you very much, James, and good morning, everyone, and welcome to the latest in our series of webinars delivered in collaboration with Aptem. I'm Pete Milsom, and as James said, I'm joined today by my colleague from UCAS, Joe Richards, our Senior Insights Lead, and we're going to be talking about what our Project Next Generation report tells us about the way that young people are making their decisions about education and careers, and also to share with you some actionable insights from the research to help you connect with the next generation of early talent. So do note we will have some time for questions during this session, so please do type them in the questions as we go. But first, just a bit about UCAS, who we are and what we do. So you probably know us already as the UK's admission service for higher education. And we're an independent charity, so we're not part of a government department. We've been around for over 30 years. Millions of people come to us every year for trusted information and guidance, helping people to make the best decisions they can. But what you might not know is that we're not just for university. We provide information, advice and guidance on all career pathways, including apprenticeships, university, of course, as well, early careers, and as I said, apprenticeships. So we really are there for all post-16 options. And over the last 3 years, we've been on a mission to broaden out our services so that we can put apprenticeship pathways side by side with university pathways with equal prominence and equal prestige so that people coming to UCAS can make really well-informed decisions about their next steps. Because millions of people come to UCAS every year for trusted information on their next steps in education and work and those other post-16 options as well. So it's vital that they have a dedicated place to go and discover all those options in front of them, because the choices they make now will impact those pathways of the future. And UCAS exists to make those choices clearer. We have around 1.3 million people that set up a UCAS Hub account every year that kind of come through our digital front doors. 25 million unique visitors to our website every year, and we're connected with over 30,000 parents, teachers, and advisors across the UK. So our audience is broad and it's deep. And although we are an independent charity, we do have a commercial operation that makes money. But any profit from that is gift aided back into the charity to be reinvested into widening access to education and career paths for future generations. And importantly, certainly importantly for UCAS as well, it maintains our independence from the government of the day. But I think the point is that millions of people are already coming to us for trusted independent information, advice and guidance. So broadening out those services to give people trusted information about apprenticeships and other post-16 pathways all in one place not only makes sense, but it's at the core of our charitable objectives to advance and assist in the advancement of education. And getting people the advice and guidance they need at the right time is more vital and urgent than ever when you consider that as we head towards the end of the decade, there's going to be an additional 200,000 18-year-olds in the population. So in 2030, when we hit that, there will be an additional 200,000 18-year-olds. And that's the kind of increasingly complex landscape in skills, education, university, and work that people are going to need to navigate, and they're going to need more help than ever to navigate all those choices that lay before them. And that brings me back to apprenticeships, because just as demand for university places will increase over the next few years, so will the demand for apprenticeship opportunities. And we can see that from our own figures. So we asked those 1.3 million people when they sign up for a UCAS Hub account, we asked them if they're interested in apprenticeships, if they'd like more information. And a quite consistent 40% of them say, yes, I'd like to know more, please. So in absolute terms, at the end of January this year, that was 440,000 people, getting on for 500,000 people saying that they would like more information about apprenticeships. And you can see on the chart here how that has stepped up since we first started asking in 2021. So that demand has grown, and it's certainly not going away. And there are also some problems that we're trying to solve here along the way. And you can see some of those stats on the slides there. I don't think I'll go through all of them, but you can see that there's an awareness and an information problem. So 1 in 3 people tell us that they don't get sufficient information about apprenticeships at school or college to make those informed choices. And I think the statistics, particularly on the right, speak to something of an image problem, a stigma perhaps that apprenticeships still have about them. So the most stark one that I will pick out there is 76% of people told us that they associate the word prestigious with going to university, and that's against only 4% of people that said the same about doing an apprenticeship. And you can see the others there, but you know, I think essentially that the issue is that for the last 30 years that UCAS has been around, UCAS has developed this high quality, comprehensive advice and guidance service for students, this kind of digital discovery wrapper that has surrounded the university application form. So if you come to UCAS and you're interested in university, then you can discover universities, of course, university courses. You get support with your application, with personal statement, with finance, accommodation, peer-to-peer support, podcasts, case studies, videos, all the rest of it. So by the time you get to university on day one, then you've got a pretty good idea of what you're going to get, and you've been very well supported on your way there. And put simply, we want to do all of that to enable people to discover apprenticeships as well. As I say, I think that's made even more urgent by that complex and competitive few years that we have ahead of us. So how can UCAS help? Well, for apprentices, then we have developed a comprehensive suite of apprenticeship information and advice and guidance for people to discover, including industry guides, for example, employer profiles that provide a kind of shop window for people to explore, and they can find out exactly what it's like to be an apprentice at a particular organisation. We've got sector-specific application guides to support people making apprenticeship applications in particular sectors or industries, support for neurodiverse individuals, support for disabled people, and that's all powered by the personalisation of our UCAS Hub. The UCAS Hub kind of is that digital place that brings all of the pages of ucas.com together in one personalised space. And also something we're really proud of as well is that people can now discover live apprenticeship opportunities side by side with university courses. So if someone is interested, say, in a career in law or tech or marketing, then they can come to UCAS, they can type in the global search that they want to be a lawyer or a digital marketer, and they not only see the relevant university courses come up there, but also side by side the relevant live apprenticeship opportunities. So they can make really well-informed choices and compare the two, whatever their career aspirations might be. And then for employers and training providers, our platform can help recruiters connect with the apprenticeship talent they need for their organizations. And you can see there a list of some of the other things that we do to inspire and enable people to discover apprenticeships as well. I've mentioned many of them as well. We also have our discovery events, our physical exhibitions. There's about 45, 50 of them across the UK every year. Thousands of people go there traditionally to discover their university options, and there'll be universities exhibiting their programs there. But more recently, and this is something that we intend to build on in the future, there's an employer presence there as well. So it's that kind of physical manifestation of the side-by-side experience that people get on ucas.com. They can come to our discovery exhibitions, they can look at universities, but they can also go and talk to employers as well and find out what it's like to be an apprentice in one of those organizations. So that's what we're doing in apprenticeships. That's how we're drawing parity between the apprentice experience and the university undergraduate experience, and helping people just to make really well-informed decisions about their next steps. And speaking of next steps, I'd like to invite Joe Richards, Senior Insight Lead from UCAS, to take us through what we've learned from our Project Next Generation report. And as I said at the beginning, please do type any questions that you have for me or Joe into the questions, into the questions tab. I think there's a dedicated one for it on the screen that you can see there, and we'll be happy to answer any of them. But for now, Joe, I guess it's over to you.
Super, thank you so much, Pete. I'm Jo Richards, and it's my role at UCAS to understand students, understand their motivations, and really get under the skin of what makes them tick. And that's so that we can support them better at UCAS in some of the ways that Pete mentioned earlier. One project that we carried out last year to really understand the future view of students was some research that we did called Project Next Generation. And that was a piece of research with students aged 13 to 17 to really look at how do they make decisions about their careers. So looking through to the future, what are their long-term plans? And it was a fascinating project to be involved in, but it was also a really important one for us to do post-COVID, because we knew how much that experience had really changed things for young people. There was that loss of school as a place, lots of other impacts as well that we know have had quite lasting impacts on young people. So we really wanted to understand what are their career views, what are their career drivers. And so we carried out an extensive piece of research, quantitative research, qualitative research, which is my favourite bit of it as well, to add some of that nuance around the statistics. As Pete mentioned, that we know that students are deciding between those different routes side by side. This is not a kind of a one or another option, particularly when you look at the younger age groups. So it was super important to us that we looked at students who were considering a range of different pathways. So we used an external research agency to help us do that. And really looking at how they're weighing up those different options. What do they know about them? Where do they want to hear about that information that's going to help them find their place in the future as well? We've released quite a few reports under the Project Next Generation banner. I was going to say last year, but it was actually earlier this year in National Apprenticeship Week. We released a report specifically looking at young people who are considering apprenticeships and employment as that alternative to traditional undergraduate pathways, and we'll share that report with you as part of this presentation. But what I'd like to do now is just take you through some of the themes of the report. Lovely, thank you, Pete. So the 6 main themes that came up during the research, and they kept kind of popping up in different sections of the survey and different sections of the focus groups and community that we ran as well, were really overlapping, but they were very, very fundamental to young people and how they make decisions. The first one was all about inspiration, and how do young people get that inspiration to discover what they might want to do, what form does that inspiration take? We also looked at the importance of enjoyment as a motivator and a way of connecting with young people as well. And experience came through very strongly, that need for young people to have more experience to help their decisions. By very definition, young people don't have a lot of experience, but they certainly recognise the importance of it to their future. We also looked at how do you give young people confidence and what do they need to know to feel confident, and the role of parents in the decision-making process as well, that financial information, some of those things that might be stopping young people from having their own independence and their own empowerment. And finally, that sense of control as well. Young people often didn't feel like they had a great deal of control over whether they're going to get offered that dream job in the future or that perfect apprenticeship position. So what can we do to help young people feel more prepared and more in control as well of what's going to happen in their future? I think when we first got the results back from the research project, the thing that came out loud and clear was really that many young people only know a little bit when it comes to their post-18 options. It was 57% that told us that they only know a little bit when they're making those decisions, and so they're not making decisions based on all of the information that's available to them, and so they're likely to be a bit restricted in terms of those choices. There's an information gap there. So it probably wasn't too surprising to us that nearly half of young people agreed that they had no idea what career they wanted to do in the future. And of course, they are young, particularly that younger age group around 13, absolutely fine that they don't have everything figured out. We wouldn't expect them to do. But what they do need to know is where to go for information and advice when they haven't got everything figured out. And there was lots of evidence throughout the survey and the research project that they're looking around them for inspiration and options. And I was quite surprised that 42% said that it was their family and friends doing a similar job that had really influenced their choices. So they're really looking around them for that inspiration. The support and advice that young people are getting, not always hitting the mark as well. This quote that we've got on the screen here was not a one-off. Young people seeking support, advice, really wanting to be talked through a process and given some tailored advice, but maybe just being handed a booklet or a PDF or sitting through a PowerPoint presentation, which wasn't necessarily really hitting the mark. We also looked at the communication, the way in which young people wanted to receive this information. And so we asked them, when it comes to your post-18 choices, what format do you want to receive this information in? And I think probably not surprising to us that social media was the top way in which young people wanted to get that information. But what was surprising to me actually was the huge variety of information preferences that young people have. It's definitely not a one-size-fits-all. Second was conversations. It was seeing real people. It was that discussion, that interaction, and some of that may come digitally, of course, but really wanting to be able to receive information directly from people. Visual information in particular, videos are really important for students of this age group, but also a role for those step-by-step instructions and written text as well, particularly for explaining more complicated processes. But overall, young people really wanted to be able to connect through channels to people that experience and get advice from them as well. If we have a look at the next slide, this was super interesting in the community groups, really digging into, well, what is it about where do young people start when they think about the future, and their starting point and their absolute number one motivation is finding a career that they're going to be happy in. And 47% told us that their number one factor when thinking about their future is that they want to enjoy their job. There were some fascinating anecdote experiences within the community groups where some young people had sat in the pandemic, seen their parents working from their home office, students humped over their laptop, perhaps not really loving what they do, and seeing those experiences and thinking, that's not for me. I really want to love my job. I want to be really passionate about what I do. And so young people are looking around at their passions, their interests, and then they need that help then to link that through to the available careers. When they are thinking about their future happiness, there was a real gap in the information that young people had. They found it quite difficult to imagine what a future workplace looks like and what it might mean day to day. They absolutely knew that they wanted a stable career, they wanted a financial situation, they wanted career progression, but that came with a sense of they wanted that within something that they loved doing. That sense of community, doing things for a cause that they believe in was super important to them. There was also a real theme around independence for young people, so abilities to be able to explore subjects, explore passion, but also travel and gain their own independence. The topic of experience, we've already mentioned this, but that came through very, very strongly as an important theme for young people, because they're using it in lots of different ways. It helps them to imagine what a future workplace might look like. They know that it's important for getting them to where they want to be. They need it for to be able to get those jobs, but they're also using it to help confirm and test out their ideas, but also inspire them for what they might want to do in the future. I think when we think about experience, we think about traditional in-person work experience, but actually there were lots of other types of experience that young people were benefiting from that might not be that in-person, face-to-face, direct experience. So things like skills development, indirect experience, and learning from others' past experiences, peer-to-peer, hugely influential for young people as well. Beyond work experience, there was that real interest in hands-on practical employability skills. Probably no surprise to those of you on the call that 91% of young people actually would like some help developing at least one of these skills. Thinking about their future, they know that they're going to be really important to them. And I think the top three, they're things that always come up when there's employer research about what do you want young people to have to enable them to be really successful in the workplace and in the future. So it was really nice to see young people recognizing that as well. Confidence building, communication skills, working as part of a team, young people really recognizing that those are the skills that are going to help them get on in life and really important to their future careers. Quite interesting as well that those top three to me seem quite COVID related. They're post-COVID themes. We've certainly seen more interest in them and perhaps those skills that they may have lost during the pandemic years. I think confidence building was an interesting one because it did come up as a theme in itself in the research, that young people have got this need and want to go and impress their teacher. They want to go in and impress their future boss and be C-suite ready on day one, and putting quite a lot of pressure on themselves to be able to do that. And they need that reassurance that actually they're not expected to go in and ace it. This is a process. They will be learning those skills as they through their induction period and as they develop in their role. I think one of the most interesting parts of the research study for me was when we looked at role models, and there were a huge variety of role models that young people told us were inspiring them. And probably not just the ones that you would expect. There was a lot in there around their family, their friends, their teachers came up a lot, but also some historical figures, some celebrities, some influencers. But what the common theme was there is that they were searching out those positive attributes to be able to connect to those role models. And they're really inspired by real examples and success stories. There was a real theme, particularly when we looked at the celebrities and the influencers, of this idea of boss mentality. So seeing people in the media that are incredibly determined to be rewarded, they're showing strength, they're showing resilience, they're showing that determination. Sometimes in adversity as well. So Taylor Swift, haters going to hate, but Taylor is going to carry on loving what she does and she's going to be successful doing it. And young people find that really inspirational. But there were some softer sides to those role models as well, being caring and supportive and seeing those reflected in their best friends or in their family. and in their day-to-day role models, but also that theme of social responsibility. So people and brands using their social media platforms for good. So social responsibility, super important and resonating with young people. But again, that theme of passion and loving what you do, really inspirational for them. I think this resonated with some previous research that we'd done as well. And this was specifically looking at who are those direct influencers for students to gain information and insight. And it shows here that the clear go-to is the teacher audience for direct advice, followed by those more specific careers advisors, followed by those parents and carers, as well as then supported by some of that information online that Pete mentioned earlier as well. But I think this is no surprise that there is a real focus on engagement with schools for influencing careers choice at quite an early age. And that's why we see a lot of that focus on employer and schools outreach activity as well. So that was a very quick whistle-stop tour of some of the main themes that came through the research. It was a hugely fascinating project to work on, and some of those stories that we heard from young people directly were very very inspirational and heartwarming, as well as helped us to identify those things that we can support young people to do, particularly in that discovery space. And some of those tools that Pete mentioned earlier are absolutely helping young people to discover that experience that they need as well. But I'll just pause there, and Pete, do we have any questions or themes that we want to pick up?
So we haven't had any questions on the Project Next Generation research just yet, Joe, but I would encourage all of those that you've joined us today to please put any questions that you have to Joe. But Joe, I think I was interested in several things that you talked about there. So if you don't mind, I wouldn't mind asking you a couple of questions myself. Particularly going back to the influencers and who influences this cohort of people. I think we often think that young people by nature are perhaps rebellious and kind of go their own way, but it looks like that you found that that parents and teachers perhaps more important than ever in those decisions that young people are taking.
It is really interesting, Pete, because it depends on how you ask the question. And I think if you ask directly young people, who's deciding your future? Absolutely me. I'm, really, really in control of that. I'm independent. But when we started to ask about inspiration and where they're getting their ideas from, and particularly came through in some of that role model as well, we're seeing a huge amount of parental influence, even if it's not kind of explicit, direct telling young people what to do. And I think that stat that we saw at the beginning, that 42% saying that they're seeing their family doing a similar job and it's influenced their choices is real evidence of that as well. What I found super fascinating in some of the comments was that that some young people were telling us when we said, "Oh, what are you looking at doing in the future?" They were talking, but you could kind of hear the parent behind it as well. So they were saying things like, "Well, if I look at this subject, then that's going to give me a good career prospects," and then they'd reel off some of these things, and you could tell that they were channeling their parents there in some of those answers as well. So I would say that parents and carers and teachers as well, their role is ever present. They're nudging, they're helping to inform and direct as well throughout that decision making process, and particularly in the younger age groups.
Yeah, it's really interesting, Jay. Thank you. And Susanna has made an observation in the Q&A saying that parents need educating too. And a recent careers fair, when talking about degree apprenticeships, one of the parents said, "But I want my child to go and get a proper degree," which I think shows that that perhaps there, as I was saying earlier on, that parents do carry perhaps the same misconceptions and perhaps even more misconceptions about certain education routes than students do. So it's really important, I think, for UCAS to play a role where it can, and we are connected with parents and teachers, but yeah, really to make sure that it's not just students who are getting the right information, but it's those influencers as well that are getting the right information.
And they could be they could be basing that on personal experiences from perhaps maybe not quite as up to date as we might like them to be as well.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. And any more questions for people on this call, then please do type them into the Q&A. It looks like we have got another one from Rosalind as well. Rosalind works for a university implementing AppTem, and she also has a 17-year-old son considering a degree apprenticeship. As a parent, I feel what may be missing here is the financial debt by doing a straight degree, hence the interest in the apprenticeship. Yeah, I mean, well, there are many benefits and there are many drawbacks to doing an apprenticeship or a university degree or another post-16 pathway, and I guess it is all about weighing up which one is right for you, right for the person that has to make their decision. As I said, there are great things about going to university, there are great things about apprenticeships as well, but it's really important to consider factors like finance when making those decisions. But yeah, hopefully, Rosalind, your 17-year-old will make the best decision for them.
Just to
Joe,
say as well,
Joe, go on. Sorry.
Sorry, Peter. I was just going to say, Rosalind, you're absolutely not alone. In the research, we included parents as part of that as well to give us that other perspective, and we asked them about the information that they felt was missing. And you've absolutely hit the nail on the head there. It was the financial information. It was the availability. Where do I go? Where do I try and start to find that information? And of course, as parents, absolutely just want children to be happy and make the right decision for them, as you said, Pete. But I think that signposting some of that information that's out there, and there is a lot of really good information out there, was a real information gap.
Absolutely. And going back to the research, Joe, we've got a question from Sonia, who's asked about, was there any research done about attitude to work? And in Rosalind's experience, a lot of young people want to work from home with their apprenticeships, which is not always practical when they're learning at that stage. I don't know if our research sort of looked at any aspects of that at all.
We did in a bit of the qualitative research. We were asking them what was going to be important to them for their future workplace, and so we did touch on some of that. And I think I've mentioned it as we were running through the slides, but it was really eye-opening to me that I think because we always bring our own experiences to these situations, don't we? And for us, that kind of office is quite easy to imagine. But there was a real sense from young people that they just, some of them were just imagining that it would be like school, and that they would have to, their time would be timetabled. They would have to be there at certain times, and so there was a real interest in that flexibility and being able to work their own time. But some students that we spoke to did really want that sense of community, and so although we're seeing some wanting that hybrid working, that flexibility, that home working, for some, particularly when they first started, they wanted to feel like they were part of something. And so actually being part of a workplace and working there for 3-4 days a week was actually important to them.
Yeah. So as ever, it's more nuanced than just work at home or go to the office. Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. We've got a question from Gaurav. Apologies for the pronunciation if that was incorrect. But Gaurav asks about some of the social media platforms that we looked at in the research, and are some for this cohort, for this group of 13 to 17-year-olds, are some platforms more popular than other? And Gaurav used the example of LinkedIn and wonders if a 16-year-old would be using LinkedIn.
That's a great question, isn't it, Pete? Yes, some are more popular than others. At the moment, for the search process, the channels that we're seeing young people use are TikTok, followed by Instagram. TikTok has recently just picked Instagram for the popularity amongst young people at the end of that decision-making process. But I think it would be, I think young people are using LinkedIn. they are using it when they're doing some of that research around available workplaces, and looking at careers that they might be interested in as well. Their parents are also using LinkedIn and helping students. There were some examples in the research where they were sitting down together and doing that research together. So I also know from when I do student panels, the first thing that I do on the train on the way home is I get LinkedIn requests from the students that are this age group that I've been talking to as well. So I think they are using those platforms that you may not necessarily think that they are.
Yeah, and I guess they use different platforms for different things, Joe. I would think, and I should imagine that that this particular generation are quite sophisticated, having grown up with social media in how they use those platforms, and might use TikTok for one set of things they have to get done, and Insta for another, and have to make that work across the many platforms that are available.
It's a lot more of a seamless process for them than it might necessarily be for me, for example.
Yes. And Joe, I was thinking as well, and this is kind of going back to the observations or the results of the research that talked about that importance of happiness. And I wasn't surprised to see that people want to be happy in their work. Of course, that we can expect that, but I was also wondering really how that stacked up against other things that we might expect to be the number one consideration as well, like money, for example, so earning potential and salaries.
I mean, it would be amazing, wouldn't it, if there was just a silver bullet, and it's just the one thing that they're looking for. And of course, salary information, career progression, all of that information, young people um, are really important to them, so that they can go into those careers with practical knowledge about what that's going to lead to, and the realities of some of those careers. But I think, and when it comes to the salaries, financial independence was the number one thing that young people were looking forward to when they think about the future. That ability to get out of the nest and spread their wings, and knowing that the finances are going to enable them to do that. But I think the research showed us that is not at the cost of doing something that they're not passionate about, and doing it doesn't come at the cost of doing something that they're not interested in either. That was the number one motivation. So yes, lots and lots of information needed. It's a head and a heart decision, but it's the heart that will lead.
Yeah, thanks, Joe. Thanks, Joe. We have got a question that's coming from Manjinder. And Manjinder asks if or if the research tells us anything about reaching those that are furthest removed from education, and the example is given of second generation individuals, for example. But do we know anything about how those that perhaps don't come from mainstream educational settings, or perhaps in underserved communities, was there anything that the research could speak to us about those those kind of types of demographics, if I can put it like that?
So we use that external research agency, so that the research that we're doing was representative of the experiences across the board. So we did include those that weren't in mainstream educational settings. The numbers were probably too small to be able to break the data down in that way. So that wasn't something that we looked at. But I think that could be an interesting angle for us to go back to the data, and particularly back to the community research and the qualitative research to see if we have got anything to add there. So I think that's an excellent point.
Excellent. Well, maybe we will do that then. And thank you very much for that suggestion, Manjinder. Thinking about experience then as well, Joe, and you were talking about how important, or at least that young people know that experience is important. They don't have any of it. They need experience to get to where they want to be. Perhaps don't know how to get it, but there's all manner of ways, particularly with the support of technology, that people can access experience. What did we learn about the importance and what young people think of the digital work experience offer, for example, or face-to-face work experience?
There was a real association with work experience just being face to face. And I did find that a little bit surprising, because with these digital natives, I know we throw that term around quite a lot, but you'd expect that they would that digital would be kind of front of mind. But when we were talking about preferred formats and experience of work experience, it was face to face that they were specifically thinking about. But there was a real inequality in the research around the availability of work experience. So pretty much everybody knew that it was important at that point, and acknowledging that we did survey earlier groups and that work experience may be coming, but it was only around, I think, about 39%, just over a third, that had that in-person work experience. And there were some real differences by types of school, by those from neighbourhoods with low participation in higher education as well. And I think that is where that kind of inequality in access for all is where digital work experience could really help to plug some of that gap, because there was, I think that being able to have those experiences, even if it's not face to face, it would open it up to more people. So yeah, I think there's a clear opportunity there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I suppose it's up to educators, employers and providers to find ways of bringing that the workplace to life for people, and really showing them what it's like. And I don't imagine that is easy. It might not be easy through the in-person experience, but I should imagine it's a challenging thing to do with virtual work experience as well, and that it's perhaps with all these things it's a mix is what they have to think about.
Absolutely. And I think when we had a conversation about how employers can bring to life their story and make it resonate with young people, and there is the real we see quite often that there's the pressure there to put the CEO in front and center in all of the materials. But actually what young people really want to see is what are the realities, what is it actually going to be like day to day. So I think hearing from people that they trust, showing some of those other voices within a company could be really influential for 16 to 17-year-olds as well.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, and Joe, so we don't have any further questions that have come in at the moment. I will direct everybody on this call to download the full Project Next Generation report. You can download it using this QR code here or from the link in the slides there. But I really would encourage you to have a deep read of this, because the insights that fall out of it are so interesting. And no doubt that if you were to contact Joe or I, then we will be able to respond to any further questions that you might have. But Joe, just to round that off, and this might be an unfair and ridiculously difficult question to ask right at the end of this, but if you were to kind of pick top 3 points of action that employers, providers, those of you that are on the call today could take to really connect with this generation, or that sums up that what we've learned from this research about how employers and providers and other influencers can really connect with this cohort, what would your top 3 be?
It's a mean question for a market researcher, isn't it? Because
Yes, sorry.
so many fascinating things in there. No, I think the first thing is around that engagement, and when we looked at those channels, it's that discussion that young people need to get involved in and that have a real need for. So thinking about how you can involve young people in discussions, not necessarily just broadcast. I think that really resonates. I think the second thing is, again, probably no surprise to everyone on the call, but authenticity. Young people really respond to real people, real stories, and that really helps them to give that view of what that employer and that employment might look like. And then I think the third thing, I think I'd have to come back to that idea of enjoyment and passion, which I think is just such a nice it's such a nice theme as well to be able to talk to young people about. But I think anything that employers can do around community groups, centres of excellence, allowing young people to find their passions and grow within those will also be incredibly attractive to this generation, I think, based on the research.
There we go, Joe's top tips. Thank you very much for that, Joe. I must apologise to Dave, whose question was right at the beginning of this, and I didn't see it when I first looked at the Q&A chat. And Dave's question was around why are our discovery exhibitions, those exhibitions that I talked about, why are they not run on weekends? Because it is difficult for children that are already at school to access them if they're at school. So Dave, it's a great point and something that we have thought about before. So most of the vast majority, 99% of the people that attend our discovery exhibitions are there because the school organise them to be there. So they will arrange the days and the transport and the time out of lessons to go there. I do realise that perhaps there will be occasionally some students that might want to visit at weekends, but we did try this, and we have given it a go on one or two occasions. So we've tried weekend events, for example, and evening events as well. But unfortunately, then we just did not get the attendance there to make it a viable proposition. And the vast majority of visitors to those exhibitions will get there because their careers guiders or their teachers have organised it via the school. So I thought that I hope that helps answer your question, Dave. It's a great question, but we have thought about it and we have tried it. Okay, I can't see any more questions in the chat now. So as I said, so thank you very much, Joe. That was really interesting. And everybody on the call, I think that QR code is still up there. Do give it a scan and download the report. But I will hand back now to James, who I think is going to close the session today.
Thanks very much, Pete and Joe, for sharing all this information today. I'm sure everyone will have found this analysis incredibly useful, and we are sure it will help shape their future recruitment strategies. We're delighted to have delivered another valuable session in partnership with UCAS today, and look forward to delivering more content packed with insights and practical guidance for apprenticeship providers, employers, and learners. This session concludes our 2024 calendar of webinars, and we invite you to visit our website if you wish to catch up with any of our webinars on demand. I'll just pop that link in the chat now. To kick off our 2025 webinar program, we are hosting our Aptem Enhance quarterly update webinar early in the new year. If you could slide over a couple slides, please, Pete. This webinar will offer an update on the rollout of Aptem Enhance features within the apprenticeships management platform, Aptem. This is a series of AI-powered features to address the high administrative burden of apprenticeship delivery whilst enhancing the human impact of tutor expertise and experience. This latest update features an introduction to our upcoming review summarization tool and latest information about our marking aid and feedback assistant and virtual assistant functionality. And I will just pop that registration link in the chat as well. So please feel free to register and share that link with your colleagues. Thank you once again to Pete and Joe, and to you all for joining today. Please do look out for the recording in your inbox in the coming days. The recording will also be uploaded to our website, which you can access via the first link that I shared in the chat. With the festive season fast approaching, we wish you all a very restful and happy festive break. Thanks again, everyone, and goodbye.
Thank you.
Thank you.